We're holding in Tractate Pesachim, Perek Sheni. The name of the chapter is called Shah. And we ended off with the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai say the Passover, which is a thick loaf. We may not bake a thick loaf on Pesach. Beis Hillel say that we permit it. The Gemara asks, Chama Passover, and how thick may a thick loaf be according to Beis Hillel? Amar Avuna Tefach. According to Beis Hillel, we're dealing with a tefach. Sheker matzinu belechem aponim tefach, because we find that the showbread, the lechem aponim, which we're not allowed to leaven, which were tefach thick. We see that it is possible to bake a dough of this thickness and still prevent it from becoming chometz. So you can have dough that is 5 inches and it's not considered chometz. Morning, welcome. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Masked Rav Yosef and Mamu Bezrizin. Rav Yosef challenged it, and if they said that such a thick loaf can be prevented from becoming chometz in the case of the lechem aponim, which were baked by diligent people, baked by the Kohanim, would they necessarily say in regard to Pesach matzah, which may be baked by regular people who are not diligent? And if they said so in regard to lechem aponim, which were made as a well-worked loaf, and he writes well-worked in parentheses. See, in number 5 he says, the Mishnah in Menachos 76 states that all Menachos meal offerings required 300 rubbings by hand and 500 poundings with a fist. This had the effect of
Retarding.
This had the effect of retarding the loaves becoming chometz. You get so much pounding.
It keeps it from happening. Slows it down.
You do 500 times this?
No, fist is you're sticking your fist into the dough.
And the other one is?
Rubbings, 300.
Oh, like this.
So, and it was done by diligent people. Would they say necessarily in regard to Pesach matzah, which may not be well worked, and if they said so regarding lechem aponim, the showbread, which were baked with dry wood, would they necessarily say so regarding the Pesach matzah, which may be baked with moist wood? They said so regarding the lechem aponim, which were baked in hot oven. Would they necessarily say so regarding the Pesach matzah, which may be baked in relatively cool oven? And also when it comes to lechem aponim, it was baked in a metal oven. Would they necessarily say so regarding two Pesach matzah, which may be baked in earthenware oven? So the Gemara accepts of Yosef's refutation. Indeed, no analogy can be drawn from the lechem aponim, and Beis Hillel do not permit a loaf that is a tefach thick to be baked on Pesach. It now explains the vices differently. I asked my teacher privately, and who was his teacher? A Rav, Umanu Rav. Or some say that it was Rav that asked Rabbi. And who is Rabbi? Rabbeinu HaKodesh. It's Rabbi Yehuda Nossi. My Passover, so he's asking, what does it mean, thick loaf? That Beis Shammai said that you're not allowed to, and Beis Hillel say you're allowed to make a thick loaf on Pesach. So he says it pas meruba. It means many loaves, more than are needed for Yom Tov. Because usually in Yom Tov you only have to make what you need for Yom Tov. Brazil permit baking more bread at one time that one needs for Yom Tov. This permit is based upon the ruling cited in Beitza 17a that baking additional loaves, even if they will not be eaten on Yom Tov, is viewed as a necessity for Yom Tov, because the bread that is needed for Yom Tov bakes better when the oven is full. Wow, that's a chidush for bakers.
You should know your wife, from your wife's business. You should know how many loaves she put in the oven.
But that you do it for efficiency. I didn't know that it actually bakes better if there's more loaves in the oven.
Yeah, I guess so.
So why do you call it, if that's the case, that you're putting many loaves in the oven, why are you calling it Passover? Passover means a thick bread. Mishum, v'amai call it Passover, mishum nefisha belisha, because it is large and thick during kneading. We by saying, or if you prefer, say that it is called Passover, it is called a thick loaf, ba'asrei da'itana, because in the idiom of this Tana locale, lefas meruba Passover kol, they would call many loaves a thick loaf. My timer, what is the reason? So now, what is Beis Shammai's reason to forbid baking many loaves? Maybe because he's exerting effort that is not needed on Yom Tov, unnecessarily on Yom Tov. Ma'ir b'Pesach. Then why does the Vayta discuss Pesach in particular, or Filu b'Yom Tov Nami? It could be applied to any Yom Tov. The Gemara says in Achinami, indeed it is so. Beis Shammai's prohibition applies to all festivals. So you're only allowed to make what you need. Vayitana b'Yom Tov shel Pesach kayibet. As it happened, this Tana was involved with the study of the laws of Pesach. When he taught this dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and he therefore spoke of Pesach. Tanya Namiachi Beis Shammai Emrim, Ein eif basor b'Yom Tov, one may not bake a thick loaf on Yom Tov. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel Matirim, Beis Hillel permitted, since no mention of Pesach is made in this Vayta. It is clear that the dispute applies to all Yom Tovim, all festivals, and is not related to the issue of chametz.
So why wouldn't you be able to make a thick loaf on Sukkot or Shavuos?
He's saying you can, according to the Torah.
Wouldn't they not? Wait a minute.
That's Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel permit.
Beis Hillel. Okay, fine. I got it.
Tanu Rabban Yitzim Pas Nekiya. One can fulfill the obligation to eat matzah with white bread, uvadro with coarse bread, v'srikin amatziyorin with decorated sarikin. What is decorated sarikin? It says in 15 that it's these are matzahs onto which various decorative shapes, such as animal forms, have been etched. Okay, so like masrek, a comb, the pronged instrument with which the etching were made. Okay.
Okay.
So he brings the Dogel Milvavo and Eira Chaim, which we learned it in the laws of Shabbos, that you're not really, there's an issue with to cut through these images on Shabbos. It's a different issue. But anyway, he says that you're allowed to with srikin hametziyorin with decorated srikin with Pesach. Although the rabbis have said that one may not make decorated srikin on Pesach, Baisus ben Zunin once asked the sages about this very matter. Why did the rabbi say that one may not make decorated sarikin on Pesach? Because the woman kneading the dough tarries over it, she spends more time while she decorates it, and thereby allows it to leaven. But one could make the decoration on a stem, and therefore it's going to happen quickly. And imprint it into the dough at once. You want us to make exceptions? Shall they then proclaim that all other sirikin are forbidden and only the sirikin of baisis are allowed? So therefore, they struck that argument. Once I followed my father into the home of Rabban Gamliel, and they served him decorated matzahs, sirikin on Pesach. Amarti, I said to my father, Abba, didn't we learn that one may not make decorated sirikin on Pesach? My son, the sages were not referring to those of ordinary people.
Two levels of people.
Yeah, rather they were referring specifically to those of bakers. Homemade decorated sirikin such as these are permitted. Or maybe some say that Rabbi Tzadok answered them as follows. The sages were not referring to those of bakers, whether they were referring specifically to those of ordinary people. Decorated sirikin from a bakery such as these are permitted. So either you would think that the bakers will do it faster than regular people, or you would say that regular people would spend less time about its perfection of the decorations, and therefore they would spend less time than the bakers. So you have arguments either or. One may make thin wafer like sirikin, but one may not make thick roll like sirikin. Okay, so back then we see that they had many different kinds of matzahs. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught in the Mishnah, Sufgonin, Vadushonin, Vaiskritin, Chalas Amasres, Amedum Aptur Menachal. Sponge bread, honey bread, wafers, a pen loaf, or a mixture of teruma and chulin, all of these are exempt from the obligation to separate challah. The Gemara defines the meaning of one of these terms. Mai chalas hamasas. What does it mean? What is a pen loaf? This is a scalded bread of householders. It says in 31, scalded bread has already been defined. The householder's variety to which the Gemara refers here is not baked in the normal fashion of bread, as the Gemara will shortly explain, and is therefore exempt from challah.
It's more like pancakes?
I think it's baked, not baked, boiled in water. Like they do water bagels.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think they're referencing to. Mm.
He was another car king. I don't know what happened. No, I think there'll be another person here.
So it says in Shrein offers several explanations to this term. Rambam Milchomis writes that this is a type of bread whose flour is scalded before kneading, yielding a very fine white product. Rabbeinu Ephraim, quoted by Baal Amor, explains that it is a type of bread that is fried in oil, wine or honey before being baked. Rabbeinu Tam, Sefer Hayosha, maintains that it is bread that is cooked and not baked at all. Most Rishonim, however, maintains the bread by definition must be baked. Rashi translates this term as escalated, an old French word from which the English scolded is derived. Since this bread is prepared in an elegant manner with very fine flour, it cannot be deemed poor man's bread and is thus disqualified as matzah.
So I saw two bikes, two cars, and
But I left the front door open.
and I saw another car came in. So what,
I came with the car.
you left your bike here, lad?
No.
You see-
Yeah, my son.
Okay. Oh, that's what confused me.
I came with the car.
So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, what is chalas hamaser? What is a pan loaf? This is the scalded bread of householders. So the Gemara cites a dispute regarding why the first 4 varieties of bread listed in the Mishnah are exempt from challah. Amar Shlakish alalu ma'aseh ilposen. These are not considered true bread because they are products of a frying pan. They are fried in a pan rather than baked in an oven. The products of a frying pan are considered bread and are obligated in challah. And as for these items listed in the Mishnah, the reason they are exempt is that they were baked in the sun. So they were not baked in the usual manner, and therefore exempt from challah. Sponge bread, honey bread, wafers, if you made them in a frying pan, they are obligated in challah. In the sun, they are exempt. So to the Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, this is a refutation to Rish Lakish, right? Because he said that if they were made in a frying pan, they are potter. Over here said they are chayav. They are potter from separating challah. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish would say to you, Achav my skinan here in the Vaita, with what case are we dealing? With a case where he first heated the frying pan surface and only afterward attached the dough to it. You ever seen the Moroccan mafleta? How it's being made? It's like
They throw it to the.
no, it's a if you take a frying pan and you turn it inside out. So right?
Upside down?
Yeah, upside down. So now the fire goes from the bottom, and on top they take the dough and they stick it on the top of it, and then they take it out, put it back both sides, and it's done. It's very thin bread. I believe they're still separating challah from it. So it says over here, so using the word with a case where he first heated the frying pan surface and only afterward attached the dough to it. That's how they make it. They heat the frying pan. Rish Lakish concedes that frying in such a preheated pan is a kind to oven baking. Akin, similar to oven baking, and the resulting product is obligated in challah. Okay? Aval hid because what happened if he first placed the dough, he attached the dough to a cold frying pan and only afterward heated it? Achinami defturin. Presumably it is indeed exempt from challah. When we say exempt from challah, from separating challah. And after all, is the crux of Rish Lakish's view. The son is seifa, son b'cham pturim. But then instead of the end of the baita, teaching that if he made the breads by baking them in the sun, they're exempt. Lifnei v'lisnei bedida. Let the baita differentiate and teach a distinction. in the very case of frying pan itself, and state as follows: regarding what case was it said that if he made them in a frying pan, they're obligated in challah, in a case where he first heated the frying pan's surface and only afterward attached the dough to it. But if he first attached the dough to a cold frying pan and then heated it, the resulting product are exempt from challah. Since the Braita does not draw such a distinction, it would seem that all cases of frying are alike, and all are obligated in challah. The Braita seems once again to refute Rish Lakish.
When today, if you do matzah on Friday, you have to do a fashat challah with the dough.
Why on Friday? Anytime.
Anytime. If the
The
quantity-
halacha is once you use a certain amount of flour, then you have to do a fresh
even if
challah.
it's for matzah.
Yeah, regardless of what. Matzah is bread. We say mutzilech min haaretz for matzah. Chasur v'chasur v'achiktani. It is as if the Braita is missing words, and this is how it should be read. Bamed v'mamurim. Regarding what case was it said that if he made them in a frying pan, they are obligated shirtiach v'sefidli. In a case where he first heated the frying pan surface and only afterward attached the dough to it. Aval hidbi kula v'sefirtiach, but when he first attached the dough to a cold frying pan and then heated it, nasor kemisha son b'chamo. It is a tantamount to where he made them by baking them in the sun. It is not true baking. Ufturin, and they are exempt from challah. Tashma, come here a proof from the following Braita. Yoitze b'matzah hina, one may fulfill the matzah obligation with a half-baked matzah. With matzah asur be'ilpas, or with a matzah that was made in a frying pan. Evidently, matzah that was fried in a pan qualifies as bread and may be used on Pesach. So are we allowed to eat matzah that was fried in a pan? Question mark. Since the Torah describes matzah as poor man's bread, it is evident that matzah must conform to the definition of bread. If the Braita states that one may fulfill the obligation of matzah that was made in a frying pan, there is a proof that the product of a frying pan is considered bread. And half-baked is half-baked. What's the 36? He calls it raw. It's raw. You know that if you go to a matzah bakery, you will see that some of the matzahs are placed back in the oven. They're not completely baked. So you have like maybe 15 seconds or 20 seconds in the oven. Oven is so hot, so sometimes he's rushing to take it out before it's actually baked, fully baked, and then they would put it back in the oven. Here too we can answer that the Braita refers to a case where he first heated the frying pan surface, and only afterward attached the dough to it. In that case, Rish Lakish concedes that what results is deemed a bread.
Rabbi, what happened if they forgot in the oven? One piece.
Burns. It goes on fire.
Become chametz.
No, it goes on fire immediately. Those ovens, since they make holes in the matzah, there's no way for it to rise anymore in the oven. Also, they never let the dough, they don't put yeast in the dough, and they don't let the dough rest for a second. So it's...
But if they forget a piece,
They don't forget.
I don't know.
in the oven, it's gonna burn. I mean, I saw it.
It's not a problem.
Out of the oven?
Yeah.
No. In the matzah bakery, you have each person is in charge of a different step of the process. So you have a guy in charge of the flour, a guy in charge of the water. So you have room for the flour, room for the water. Those that are in the flour room have a window, they open the window. And you have a guy with a ball, big ball. That's his job. He's kofanema. He's mixing. No.
And that's on a clock. Boom, 17 minutes. They do the whole thing.
No, they do it much faster than 18 minutes.
Yeah,
The deadline is 18 minutes, but in reality they are done by 9 or 11 minutes the most.
yeah, the one I got the one in Borough Park. The guys, my rabbi used to take me there.
So they take the dough. Once they mix the dough with the water, the guy takes it and he pound on it. He has it looks like a pole made out of metal, heavy metal. He pound on the dough for like 4 or 5 minutes. The dough becomes elastic and good, and then they would roll the dough to a long, looks like a long sausage, and then they would cut it to small pieces, and they would give the guys on the table. They would give them only what they can handle. So each one would take one, so there's nothing on the table, and the part that is left is continuing to work with it. And once they made a matzah out of it, they throw it, and there's a guy that makes holes in it. He has a machine that makes the holes in the matzah, and he makes the holes, and does it so fast. When you go 1 and 2, when it's, the return makes the matzah fly to the next guy, and they take it and he puts it on a pole.
Yeah.
The guy, and then there's a guy who takes the pole and puts it in the oven.
Right.
And all these people are getting paid a lot of money because everything they do is done professionally,
Diligent.
and also very quickly.
Yeah.
Because they have to make the matzah even. This is one of the hardest jobs. Because if you make one area very thin and one area is a little thicker, it's going to burn in the oven.
I had a bunch of women, the Jewish women sitting there like this.
So, and actually, where I grew up in Kfar Chabad, you have the biggest matzah factory in the world,
Oh, wow.
and they sell it too. They start baking matzah right after Tishrei. So you have Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar, Nisan.
Only Shmula or the regular? It's where?
No, only Shmuel matzah. Not for machine matzah. You have probably bigger factories, and they don't do machine matzah. But they have two of those brick oven that are working at the same time. I think they tried to open same owner made matzah bakery in Ukraine to have that the labor will be cheaper. But I don't think they got to the same quality as the matzahs in Israel. Just to give you an example, the guy who places the matzah in the oven, in my days he would be getting $100 an hour. Many years ago, I don't know how much they get now. But he is exposed to tremendous heat. I mean, he is dripping.
There's a big guy sweaty.
He's sweating.
Like the pizza guy.
He's sweating buckets.
Yeah, but that adds to the flavor.
So the Gemara says, "My matzahina." So my matzahina on the right column it says, "What is the meaning of half-baked matzah?" Amar Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Kol sheposa. Yehuda said the name of Shmuel so long as he can break it apart cleanly. Ve'ein chutim nimshach ממנו, without strands of dough pulling out from it. Amar Rabba v'chen lachmei soido. The same is true of the loaves of the Toida offering. If the loaves are sufficiently baked that they break apart cleanly, then they are acceptable. Pshita, the Gemara says this is obvious. Achal lechem ksiv, achal lechem ksiv. Pasuk says bread here, and the pasuk says bread there. Regarding Torah, both challah and matzah are described by the Torah as bread. Like I said before, you say moitzi lechem u'noretz. Challah and matzah are described by the Torah as bread. Clearly, the definition of bread ought to be the same in both cases. Why then what's the novelty of Rabbi's teaching? Ma'od the tema oil uchsiv v'yikriv mimenu. Since the pasuk states regarding the Torah offering, ye shall offer from it echad mikol korban, one from each as an offering. Echad shelo yitel parus, one implies that he should not take a broken loaf and give it to the Kohanim. Ve'ocho keman difriso damim. And therefore here in the context of Torah loaves, I might have thought that until it reaches a more advanced stage of baking, I should view the loaf as it is were broken. As if it were broken. So that baking it only to the point where it breaks open cleanly will not suffice. Kamashmanon, Rava informs us this is not so. As long as the loaf breaks open cleanly, it is sufficiently baked for the Torah offering. The Gemara returns to the dispute between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Basically, they challenge Rabbi Yochanan from the following Baita. Ameiso, regarding Hameiso. What is Ameiso? It says in number 3, was a type of scalded bread whose preparation involved scalding flour with boiling water, after which the mixture was either fried or baked.
Scalded.
So we said before, it's a bread that was boiled in water.
Oh, non-baked.
It could be that afterwards they baked it, but we saw in other sources it says also the very fine flour was used.
Mm-hmm. Your question was on the word scald? Scald, if water was scalding hot, it means it could burn. It could burn something. So I think maybe what it means here is it's that scalding hot water is put to the flour first.
And that's why I mentioned the water bagels before, because they would have a special big pot that they would.
It's from hot, it says here, a form of thermal burn resulting from heated fluids such as boiling water or steam. So God forbid you heard somebody had a scald, was meant that they put their hand near
The scar came from the
hot
scald.
water or something. And they get
Right.
from hot water.
And they called out.
So, like if you heard somebody had a scald injury, it's meant with the hot water. Like
Thanks for
sometimes
sending
the
my
plumber
wife up with all the
is
stuff to send home.
working with the steam.
I still have to bring
It
back
happens
this
to them. They have terrible accidents with that. So, but when you do the scalding, so you're putting.
I just learned in halacha if you're allowed to put the Gemara on a book, it says that if the book was there, you'd be allowed to. So you're fine.
Thank you. Yeah, I had that question. I have a friend who does it all the time.
So if you reset the books and you set them on the table to do that, you're not allowed to. But if it was already on the table, it's fine.
Right. Thank you.
So
Also, I heard that it depends on what's contained in this.
no, I'm saying that in general, like putting on top, but this is not.
Even if it's a chumash?
No, chumash wouldn't.
I don't think he didn't differentiate between a chumash or not. He said if it's already on the table. But yeah, in general, we're not supposed to. Chumash has the superiority.
And better Tanya.
Yeah, Tanya.
Well, Tanya's Baal Peh, so if you have Baal Peh and Baal Peh, that's okay, I think.
Yeah, Hasidim consider the Tanya the Bible of.
Right.
It's not considered, so it's not considered Baal Peh, the Tanya?
It is Baal Peh. But if it's on top of other Gemara or other things, it wouldn't be a problem.
I don't know, if the Gemara is on top of the Tanya, that's a problem?
Yes,
Okay, I didn't know, okay,
not a problem, but you know.
all right, not the best, okay, fine.
So we said Ameisa. Regarding Ameisa, we learned that Ameisa is a type of scalded bread, whose preparation involved scalding flour with boiling water.
Yes,
Beisilel poitin. Beisilel. So Beis Shammai poitin. Beis Shammai exempt it from challah, and Beisilel mechayven. Seemingly Beisilel is more strict than Beis Shammai over here.
right.
Beisilel say you have to, even though you put it in this boiling water, you're obligated to separate challah. A chalita, regarding a chalita, what is chalita? In number 5, it tells us chalita is also a type of scalded bread. The Weissel explains how it differs from meisa.
How
Okay,
many
so
types of bread we have?
plenty.
We have only 4 types.
No. If you look in like different cooking in different places in the world, you see each region has their own type of bread.
But it's not so common. You go to the Aram, we have, I don't know, 10
Over
types.
here, because over here it's
Croissant,
limited.
right? Bagels, bialys. Yeah,
Pita.
Bialys, I haven't
Pita.
heard about
That's
bialys.
true. We also have that.
Nice.
You said that Lower East Side bialys.
It's like bread and wine, right? The things we make brachas over and on Shabbos, they have how many kinds of wines are there? How many kinds of breads are there?
So when it comes to chalita, it's the opposite. Beis Shammai are obligate it in challah. Beis Hillel poitin, Beis Hillel exempted. Ezo meisa ve'ezo chalita. So Gemara says, what is meisa and what is chalisa? Or what's the difference between the two? So the Gemara answers, meisa kemach shal gabe mugloshin, chalita mugloshin shal gabe kemach. Meisa is flour is poured over boiling water, whereas a chalita is boiling water is poured over flour. That's the difference. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi Mishum Aviv Zeh v'zeh lifto. Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yossi, says in the name of his father, both the meisa and the chalita are exempt from challah. The Gemara cites a different version of this portion of the Baita. Some say that Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yossi, said in the name of his father, Zeh v'zeh l'chiyuv. Both meisa and chalita are obligated in challah. In regard to both meisa and chalita, the law is the same. If after scalding the flour, he fried them in a frying pan, he is exempt from challah. But if he baked them in an oven, then he is obligated in challah. Tana Kama, and what of the Tana Kama? How shall we understand the view that Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai differentiate between meisa and chalita? Ma'ishna meisa, ma'ishna chalita. What significant difference is there between meisa and chalita? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, v'chen Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yechon, v'yisim Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, ke machloikes bezu, kach machloikes bezu. The argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding meisa is just the same as the argument regarding a chalita. There really is no substantive difference between two substantive.
On the first syllable, substantive.
So there is really no substantive difference between the two cases. Vesavra and the Baita, as it appears, is indeed contradictory. Mi sheshanazu lo sheshanazu lo shanazu. The fact is that the Tana that taught this part of the Baita is not the same as the Tana who taught that part of the Baita. Tani miyat, and at any rate, the Brisa teaches whether it's meisa or chalita. If you made them in a frying pan, he is exempt from chala. Betanu chav, if you baked them in an oven, he is obligated in chala. Tiyuvta de Rabbi Yochanan, this would seem to be refutation of Rabbi Yochanan, who asserts that frying is tantamount to baking. This matter is the subject of a Tanoic dispute. And I side with another Tana, who holds that frying is equivalent to baking. That Tanya, for it was taught in a Baita. It might have been thought that a meisa and chalita are obligated in chala. Talmud Leimar lechem. Scripture therefore states bread, limiting the chala obligation to true bread. Rabbi Yehuda emer ein lechem ela ofei betanu. According to Rabbi Yehuda, what constitutes bread? What is real bread and what is not real bread? If it's baked in an oven. Rabbi Yehuda ainu Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda is seemingly saying exactly the same as the Tanakama. What is his point? Ela lav maseil pasika b'nai. Rather, is it not precisely the issue of the products of a frying pan that is at issue between them? As follows: Tanakama sova maseil fas chayovim, Rabbi Yehuda sova maseil fas pturim. Tanakama said that even if you're frying it in a frying pan, you are still obligated to give in challah. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, even a product of a frying pan are exempt from challah. The Tanakh position supports Rabbi Yochanan's view that fried products are bread, and therefore you chayav. You're obligated in challah. So the Gemara suggests a different way to understand this baita, which will not support Rabbi Yochanan. This is not how the baita should be understood. Everyone all agree that the products of a frying pan are exempt from challah. And the dispute here in the baita is the case where he baked it again in an oven after having fried it. So he fried and then baked it. The Tanakh Kamasova. Since he went back, since he baked it afterward in an oven, lechem korin, it is called bread. Bread is only that which is baked in an oven from the very beginning. And since in the beginning he baked it not in an oven, but rather in a frying pan, lav lechem, who is not deemed bread, not considered bread. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. But Tanakama said no. If you baked it in an oven, it doesn't make a difference before or after. You baked it in an oven, it's considered bread. It emerges according to this explanation of the Baita that Rabbi Yehuda maintains that once dough was fried, it cannot be made into bread by being baked in an oven. The Gemara explains Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning. Amar Rabba, mai tam de Rabbi Yehuda. What is Rabbi Yehuda's reason? Dichtiv. It's written in Leviticus 26:26. Ve'ofu Esther noshim lachmechem v'sanu echad. It is written, and 10 women will bake your bread in one oven.
That was in the Tachachos, right?
Yeah. Lechem v'ofu v'sanu echad kori lechem. This teaches that only bread that is baked in a single oven is called bread. But bread that is not baked in a single oven is not called bread. You're right, look at 21. It says, this pasuk describes the punishment that the Jewish people will suffer if they do not follow God's commandment. The simple meaning of the pasuk is that 10 women will have to bake loaves together in a single oven in order to conserve wood, which will be in great shortage. However, the pasuk, your bread, is the proof for us. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda expounded it to derive that only bread that is baked in a single oven is deemed your bread. Bread that is first fried and then baked in an oven is not viewed as bread.
Rabbi, what happened if I ate challah that the woman that didn't make a flashat challah? It's a problem? She didn't make, I ate. What is the problem?
You could take it off right there. You could take it off.
If he doesn't know.
But so you know what some people are, like some people when you make, when you're making lechem mishnah, see, I mean when you're saying the bracha hamotzi, so you take a piece, right, then.
It's probably like eating tevel or eating dmai.
No, but I'm saying you can take a piece off when you're making like I take a piece and put
When
it.
it's ready?
When it's on the table, when I'm ready to make hamotzi for Shabbat. So then you take a piece, leave it off, then you say that's for the.
No.
Maybe, no, is that a good way to go?
But
Menashe, to
if she
take care of
did
that
it-
suffix?
But
I
if,
think once it's baked, you can't do it.
You can't do a okay,
also if the quantity, if she made only 3 chalot, small chalot,
She doesn't
you
have
don't
to.
have to. She doesn't have to.
Okay, there you go. I don't know.
Yasir Rabba v'Rav Yosef achod Rabbi Zera. Rabba and Rabbi Yosef were seated behind Rabbi Zera. V'Yosef Rabbi Zera kamed Ula, while Rabbi Zera was seated directly before Ula. Amar Rabba Rabbi Zera, boy minei me'ula. Asked the following question of Ula: Hidbik mi befnim v'hertiach mi b'chutz ma'u. What if he attached the dough to the inside of the frying pan and heated it up from the outside of the pan? He placed the pan over the fire. Amalei said, so he attached the dough to the frying pan and then he placed the frying pan on fire. Amalei said, Rabbi Zera to Rabba, my Amalei, what is the question? For if I asked him that question, Amalei, he obviously will say to me, hey, new my silfas, this is precisely the case of the product of a frying pan that Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan discussed. Ask the following question of Ula. What if he attached the dough to the inside of the frying pan and placed the frying pan so that the flame was opposite the top of the pan?
Isn't that the
23,
normal
it
case?
says, let's say 23, rather than fry the dough in a pan over a flame, he broiled it in a pan under a flame. Perhaps, you see, it's like steak. So fire directly now on the dough.
The fire is on the top.
So let's say this is the pan. This is the pan. You put the dough in here, and then you put it over the fire. So the fire is like burning the bread. He broiled it.
No, and it says in a pan under the flame.
Rather than fry the dough in a pan over a flame, he broiled it in a pan under a flame. Perhaps even Rish Lakish would consider this is tantamount to baking in an oven. No. Amar Leah. So said Rabbi Zera to Rabbi Yosef, my Amar, what is there for me to ask him? If I asked him that question, Amar le'rovanim oisim ken. He obviously will say to me, most poor people do just that in order to conserve fuel, since this is a normal use of a frying pan. This case is certainly included in the dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Ravasi discusses whether Ma'aser Sheni can be used to fulfill various obligations. Amar Ravasi, that was yesterday's discussion about Ma'aser Sheni,
Yeah,
if we can use it for matzah.
right.
So Ravasi said concerning a dough made from grain of Ma'aser Sheni, Div Rav Meir Petur min Chala. According to Rav Meir's opinion, it is exempt from Chala obligation. According to the sage's opinion, it is subject to the Chala obligation. Okay, continue, God willing, tomorrow.
For Marcus over there, the Cumans.